If you watched Violet Evergarden or Clannad, then you've seen at least one work of the animation studio Kyoto Animation, or KyoAni for short. For those of you who have already indulged in the world of our anime's creators, other well-known names include of course Toei Animation, the studio behind One Piece and Dragon Ball, or MAPPA that seems to be the hottest talk in town these days. Now these studios have more or less distinct flavors accompanying the anime they produce. In a lot of cases, however, it's pretty difficult to watch a series or movie and immediately be able to guess its production studio, which is more often than not attributed to most studios outsourcing their work to other companies or otherwise seeking assistance from external sources such as freelancers. In fact, only about 15% of industry members are full-time employees, so an immense amount of amazing work that we attribute to a certain studio is actually being done by some freelance artists who just happen to be contracted and use the animation desks within the company.
How did I get here? The end.
But KyoAni is built different. Kyoto Animation is arguably the most self-sufficient anime studio with the most complete in-house pipeline in the entire industry. Being founded on July 12, 1985 in, well, Kyoto, this studio developed from a small company that mainly assisted others in their anime productions as an outsourcing option to an absolute powerhouse until mid-2019. Until July 18th specifically, where its original physical studio fell victim to an arson attack claiming the lives of 36 people, including Kigami Yoshiji, who was in charge of the anime I will talk about later on. KyoAni has since recovered well, however, and is heading back to its original strong form. One thing that has pretty much always stayed the same though is KyoAni's choice in the type of anime they produce. The community likes to call them simply cute girls doing cute things. Like cute girls doing cute music, or cute girls doing cute slapstick. The biggest twist you will find in their lineup is with the likes of Free, which, you know, may be thought of as cute boys doing cute swimming for some. But what if I told you that it hasn't always been like that? As a matter of fact, their very first fully complete in-house production, their biggest project at the time, their most significant work period, some may say, that paved the way towards their recognition as the in-house animation studio in the industry couldn't be more different. That anime was none other than Munto, a 54-minute long, super hard to find OVA from 2003 with a heavy focus on narrative with a grand story of epic scale, massive battles fought by muscly men and internal struggles of the characters. A far cry from what the studio is usually known for today. Munto was so important that they hosted their own blog on its website munto.com, which took a great hit in the 2019 tragedy and doesn't seem to be up anymore. KyoAni was even able to promote their first own anime by having some of the characters appear in the 128th episode of Inuyasha as cameos, since they used to help out with 33 episodes in total for the anime. And Munto is quite an interesting work by itself. The original OVA actually got a sequel 2 years later and an alternative TV series in 2009, which will be the focus of today's video. I've decided on the latter since the original OVAs aren't in a 16:9 format, more people seem to prefer the TV version, and just by looking at each individual runtime, it's also packed with more content. Most of the OVA scenes are recycled, however, so there shouldn't be much difference story-wise. Talking about the story, well, what is Munto about? So it starts off with this preamble of some sorts that you sometimes see anime do before the actual opening starts, where it tells you basically every episode the same thing to really hammer in the premise of the show. In this universe, there exist two worlds, Earth and the heavens. You know, Earth holds standard humans like you and me, and the heavens are populated by supernatural superhumans, so to say. Now, they aren't actually merely separated by space, no, but also by time, and don't ask me how this works. And long ago, these two races, I guess, fought a long and harsh war for the so-called Acto, which is basically some energy form that can create stuff. Now, at this point, I should probably tell you whether or not this review kind of contains any major spoilers for the show, and to be honest, I was a bit conflicted about which direction I should go. Ultimately, I decided on keeping it as spoiler-free as I can, since Munto is hardly known in the broader community, so neither do I want to ruin your potential first-time viewing experience, nor does it make much sense to go into great detail about a show no one really knows anyway. But yeah, where was I? Ah yes, so if that were the whole story, just two people living next to each other, then that would be a bit boring, so we spice it up a notch by making the Acto run out in a short amount of time. This causes the heavens to panic because everything here is made out of Acto, even the populace itself. Especially the magical kingdom led by our main hero and name provider Munto consumes the most amount of Acto out of all the different factions in the sky. What follows is unrest and consequently a war between it and its allies versus the so-called Union, a conglomerate of enemy kingdoms and continents. The Union tries to stop the magical kingdom in consuming so much Acto in order to preserve what is still left, while the magicians, mainly Munto himself, believe that a certain human girl could be the key to saving the heavens. Now, the human world doesn't actually notice a whole lot about that since, if you remember, these two worlds are currently separated by both time and space. The weirdest thing that happens is that it has been raining a lot recently, in fact so much that the streets are filled with rainwater so it looks like you can walk on the sky. Oh yeah, that and magical pillars from the heavens falling onto Earth that could lead to its destruction, which doesn't make much sense because they are pretty much completely separated, which is stated more than on one occasion, but let's move on. So anyway, while Munto is our MC in the heavens, Susume, a 13-year-old girl, is our protagonist in the human world. For many years now she can actually see the heavens sometimes and has visions of it and even Munto from time to time, which she thought was normal for the longest time, which makes her clearly special even though the anime tries to portray her as completely ordinary every now and again. And to finally get to the point already, the main goal here is for Susume and Munto to meet and connect both worlds instead of separating them, which would solve the Acto leaking issue. How that works and how that works out, you'll have to find out yourselves. For now though, let's talk about the actual quality of the show. So at its core, this is your standard saving the world story with a young teenager in the main role that we are so accustomed to by now within the anime space, though not KyoAni specifically, mind you. What I really like about this show, however, and what got me into it in the first place, was its scale and presentation. I'm always a sucker for these massive, high-stake worlds, especially when the staff that's realizing it knows what it's doing and has enough resources for their vision. KyoAni had gathered enough of those as well as a good amount of experience to pull off an OVA and by proxy a TV series that more often than not has a movie-like production value that perfectly illustrates how massive these two worlds at stake really are and what kinds of powerhouses with pretty cool character designs are fighting for it. Seriously, especially these Dragon Ball Z-esque fights where individuals throw out an arm and destroy a whole army while flying are incredibly satisfying to watch. And they come minus the worst part. There is no talking in between fight scenes. The characters actually shut up and concentrate on the battle without telling their opponents their master plan or which ability they're about to launch at their enemies. Only a single fight came close to that, but here the characters aren't actually shown talking. They either use some form of telepathy to communicate while in the flow of the action, or they actually talked at some point, but the viewer isn't shown such a static dialogue scene but a dynamic fight sequence instead, which I have never seen before and I really want other directors to use this technique. And by the way, the directing overall is pretty solid as well. There are these really long shots, for example, of characters just talking that still could hold up my attention through effective atmosphere and storyboarding. This doesn't apply only to Munto, but KyoAni anime in general. They have some talented staff to work with, and it kind of hurts a little every time a new KyoAni show comes out, and it's yet again about cute girls doing cute things and not about something that appeals to me. Damn it. Anyways, then there is this really neat magical kingdom consisting of floating islands that are reminiscent of the location Zeal from Chrono Trigger. So the world itself, ignoring the mundane human world for a moment, looks really interesting. But that's also the keyword, looks. You see, there's only so much world building you can achieve in the span of 9 episodes, or half for that matter, since the other world must also be explored, of course. Now there are attempts made to flesh out the heavens, especially in regard to how the magical kingdom relates to the almighty Acto energy power thingy, but that barely scratches the surface of anything present in the show, really. Like, there is a scene about the history of the heavens that shows all of the distinct kingdoms and it looks so interesting. But it also hurts because I know we will never know more about that, how the relations in between them work, who the leaders are, how economy works, if everything's made out of Acto, and so on and so forth. In fact, that's the most common and central criticism I have with this show. There is lots of potential and interesting ideas here, but it's all crammed within a measly 9 episodes. Even shorter than the classic one cour 12 episode show we usually get. For instance, the first 3 episodes tell a story so vast it could easily work as a whole arc in shonen anime. And this whole series is kind of separated into 2 parts. The first 3 episodes and then the rest, which happens after, wait for it, a 2-year time skip of all things, like on top of rushing the show in the first place. Munto is really too big and too ambitious for its own good. But the worst thing of all is that even more time is spent on completely nonsensical filler side stories that don't add anything to the main events. Like there's this random dude whose name and age I don't remember and won't look up out of spite that gets this generic tragic backstory in the beginning, who then rizzes up one of the main girl's 13-year-old friends who looks and acts like a toddler and wants to quote marry end quote her, to which she promptly agrees. And then they cross a river together in an immensely dramatic way, and it's all so damn cheesy and does nothing for the overall story at all. Like, if we are really optimistic and diplomatic here, then maybe you could make a case for it to be some kind of an analogy for the main character partnership, you know, Munto and Susume, but even then is it incredibly ham-handed and steals precious runtime from an already super short show. And that's unfortunately not the only occasion where characters are introduced that contribute around at 0% to neither Munto's main plot nor its themes. Speaking of themes, there are actually some interesting ones present, like facing responsibilities even as children, in particular those that affect others as well. Then there's destiny and whether it's possible to overrule it, of course the theme of friendship as well, and a bunch more that Munto had thrown in here without any possibility of exploring them either beyond surface level or surface level at all. Though very rarely, they actually overtake the plot a little bit and lead to these classic anime situations where you'd rather save your two friends than both worlds, which would lead to everyone dying or getting yourself into stupidly dangerous situations for no good reason. Anyway, these are my main problems with the show, though there are some other ones like the intransparent power system, neutral parties clearly favoring the heroes at all times, and lots of unexplained small to medium things like the space-time continuum or how character abilities work, etc. But it's not all bad. There are still a bunch of rays of hope shining through the wall of flaws. The villain named Güntol, for example, is alright. He's grey in that he goes against our main couple, but he genuinely wants to save the heavens from its downfall, which he truly believes Munto is incapable of, by first prolonging its demise and then using a safe and proven method of getting Akto that was used in the historic past. And later, he even accepts Munto's and Susume's way. This small level of character development is actually seen in other characters as well, which I can appreciate. Including our protagonist Susume, who first appears as kind of a plot device if I'm being honest, since she at first only exists as being a simple key to saving the world, but she actually changes from someone running away from her problems and realities to a somewhat competent player in the story to take matters into her own hands and actively participate. I also like how the internal struggles of her, more towards the end of the series, are presented and how there is a detectable amount of solid drama around her and her friends going on. And just to be clear, all of this is fairly basic and nothing too crazy, but it's still nice to see some attempts being made of fleshing out characters. And on the other side of the coin, there isn't a whole lot of comedy, so it's fairly focused on the serious aspects of the plot, but when it happens, then it's actually pretty funny, I gotta say. And last but not least, this series, short as fuck as it is, does have an intended ending with the main setups being finished. This may not sound like an accomplishment for you, but looking at the average anime, I always appreciate that. That said, there is a post-credits scene that leaves open the possibility for a sequel, so who knows. Overall, Munto is alright. It features many interesting ideas and themes and has some solid potential going for it that it will never reach, as it was set up for failure since the very beginning, when the production committee or whatever decided that 2 OVAs, or 9 episodes in total, would be enough for an undertaking of these proportions. So all these interesting tidbits can be counted lucky when they even reach surface level, since every one of those tries to leverage the plot, leading to nothing sticking out or being fleshed out enough to remember anything a week from now. On top of being limited by its runtime, a big portion of it is being consumed by mundane filler side content that one could easily cut out to give more breathing room to the main events. But even in these optimal circumstances, Munto would keep feeling like an overlong trailer to a much bigger series that will never see the light of day, especially now that KyoAni has made such a name for itself producing everything that isn't Munto. Still, part of me daydreams from time to time about what would have happened had KyoAni pursued the direction of their first significant work instead of concentrating on making girls as cute as possible. But then again, one could also argue that it's better they walked a different path, going the low-key slice of life route, and shielded us from potentially more half-baked Muntos that sometimes aim a bit too much for a fanfic flair for my liking. Whatever it is, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, I'd very much appreciate a thumbs up. I doubt it, but did you already know this anime? And what's your favorite anime from Kyoto Animation? Let me know in the comment section. And finally, if you want to see more videos like this, don't hesitate to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.